Dancing on into season 18.
Right?
Yes, yes.
Episode 152.
Hi, y'all. I'm Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial entrepreneur and Amazon bestselling publisher, author, and all-natural product manufacturer. I'm a champion for your natural self-care, sustainable business care, and overall intentional wellness.
Hey, y'all. I'm Christine Gautreaux, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, published author, and dancing social worker who helps you upgrade yourself and community care.
Together, we are a podcast rooted in the 8 dimensions of wellness and the co-founders of the Women Connected in Wisdom community.
And we like to get together every week for intentional conversations between us and special guests about how to be wise in business, relationships, and wellness. How do we do it?
Mm-hmm. So important. Such an important question. It's important to ask the right questions, you know?
Anybody that listens to the show knows that we have systems because you are the system queen. And I don't know if you know, one of the reasons I became a social worker years ago was because social work therapists, LCSWs, LMSWs, believe in systems. So like not every counselor you go to looks at the whole system. Sometimes they just look at one piece. And when you are with a therapist that's a social work trained, they look at the entire system and how the systems go together.
That's important to know. I was looking last night, actually early this morning, should we say, at some therapists I have the option of going with. And I was working through, you know, their different strengths and the systems that they use, whether it's cognitive behavioral or, you know, PTSD, military. I said that might work with the systems, you know. So I hear what you're saying, and I always appreciate your tidbits that you have like that. Really good.
No, thank you.
Yeah. When I think about environmental wellness, what I've been thinking about is having the right person in your environment to ask the right questions from, right? That's important.
Absolutely. And I think about all the guests we have on recently, like with different systems and different tools to know ourselves. Like I even take it a step back when you say that, because I'm like, how do we know who or what's in our environment and what's best for us, right? In Interplay, we often talk about our inner authority and our body wisdom. And one of the ways to know is by listening and checking in with our bodies, right? You know, how you were taught, like, listen to your well, so hopefully you were taught, or people listening were taught to listen to their intuition. And when you get that gut feeling, right? Gut feeling is a body wisdom tool, right?
So important.
Yeah.
We were talking about it last night. I was talking about my shoulders. You know, now being 30, like I'm glad I listen to parts of my body. You would think that I might be trying to work on, well, things I'm working on, right? Abs, my thighs, making sure thighs look right for this swimsuit season we have coming up. I wouldn't have been thinking about my shoulders, but listening to, okay, what are you telling me? You know, you talking about breathing in between parts that feel good and not so good. Different seasons, you know, different things will come up, and it's wise to be paying attention.
Do you know I'm in physical therapy for my shoulders right now?
We've been talking about it. And so and you said you were going to do one visit, but I think last show you were talking about your second visit. So
I'm on 3 or 4 by now.
Okay. So where are we at? Catch us up. Yeah.
Well, I was talking to the physical therapist this morning. It was hysterical because last weekend I was at a celebration of life for a dear friend of ours in our Interplay community, Tom Henderson. And what I was talking about with the physical therapist this morning is that I was hanging out with 80-year-olds and we were talking about T's, Y's, and I's. That's what you do when you rehab a shoulder. And I was like, well, I was hanging with the conversation. And we were comparing notes on how our shoulders were doing. Yeah, what I realized, well, first of all, you know, I really believe in when people have expertise and knowledge that we don't have, accessing those resources. And the honest truth, the transparent truth is I need to pay somebody to make me do this workout because I have it at home and I do, and yeah, I'm hit or miss, right? It depends on my schedule. It depends on how long I'm sitting at the computer at the, you know.
Yes, I do.
It's we are at the computer, right?
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So So I have the exercises to do at home, and every week I'm like, oh, and then I'm like, oh, it's Wednesday
I
again.
haven't done that yet.
What? Right? And
Yeah.
so far I'm keeping going. And also I'm just noticing because they add on different exercises every time and your strength and I'm like, oh, I mean, this is an old injury that's been reactivated because I played volleyball, I played basketball, I threw discus and shot put, like, and we were back
You've
in
been
the
holding
day.
out. You didn't tell me all
Oh, you
that.
didn't know that? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Discus and shot put, I actually was ribbon. Back then it was ribbons. It wasn't medals, right? It was, unless you went all the way to state, which, yeah, no, but I did well on the local and regional levels.
I hear
I think it
you.
was district back then. Yeah. I used to love doing that. Like, I love the discus where you spin and you release it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why. That just, but back then there wasn't a bone sticking out, or you didn't, like, you pushed through things you probably shouldn't have pushed through. Like,
Right.
you just did
You
it.
just
And
did. Yeah.
so, and I'm sure we didn't always have the right form or the right, so,
Mhm.
and now I think between the dog and pickleball, like,
Hmm.
my old lady activity.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. That's okay. I love you for who you are.
Thank you.
Yes. I said, "What's pickle social?" I said, "Oh, I know what that is."
Right?
Because
Know
I
what
like
that is?
pickles. I said, "They're
Right.
not talking
No.
about pickles,
No,
no."
no, no. We're talking about
Right,
pickleball.
right.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You get it all here on the Women Connected Wisdom Show. You get the good thighs for the bathing suit, and you
Yeah,
get the pickleball
yeah.
conversation.
That's important. Gotta keep the arms active for the shoulders, right? That's what we're talking about.
Right?
So, yeah, and, I always thought growing up that the kids who knew a little bit about a lot were so smart, and that's how these conversations happen, it's not, you always knowing intentionally that I'm going in to learn these 3 things, and these are the 3 things I'm gonna come out of this conversation with.
Right?
Um, so it's a beautiful thing. I'm here for it.
Right? Me
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Well, we're talking
So
about environmental wellness today. Should I read the definition for our audience?
yes, and before you read the definition, I think this is a perfect place to give a trigger warning. I don't know how far into this conversation we're going to go because, again, transparent as we are on the podcast, we were planning on having an expert guest. And today it's going to be Christine and myself spending time with you ladies, the gentlemen listening. And so when we talk about the title of the show, which is recognizing the signs of, what is it?
Narcissistic abuse. Yeah,
Narcissistic
and I don't
abuse.
know that we have to have that conversation, especially since our guest wasn't able to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I figured even if we lightly weave it in, because we
Mhm.
won't be going into the depth of her story without her being here,
Mhm.
we talked about it, and I still just want to put it out there, in case it
Sure.
does, put
Sure.
somebody in a certain place as we talk about environmental wellness. But let's see where
Yeah.
we go.
Yeah. Here we go. So, environmental wellness is supporting your good health by occupying pleasant, stimulating environments that enhance well-being. It promotes interaction with nature and also creating enjoyable personal environments both in and out of your workspace. This includes knowing the types of environments you thrive in and having an intentional relationship with these places, including the earth.
Mm, that's good. So for me, what this brings up this week is the transition in work, right? If something happens, making sure that I'm communicating it so that I can have a good relationship with my work environment, whether it's socially in my team or the work environment and how I feel going into the building, right? So that I can be in a good spirit, in a pleasant spirit to be able to serve my guests and my team.
Mhm.
What comes up for you this week when you hear this definition?
Our guest, Melody LeBaron,
Hmm.
the expert in transforming space, she
Yeah.
was in Atlanta this week, so she popped by my house,
Hey,
and
Melody.
I almost canceled her 1,000 times because I've been running so fast. I am not up where I want to be with my systems and organization and personal environmental stuff. But
Yeah.
I also realized some of the things going on. I
Mhm.
needed a space clearing. So I just said to her, I will actually be on the meeting at the time you have open. Would you come and clear the space in my house? And then I'll finish the meeting and we'll have a conversation. And I'm so glad I did. Like, almost canceled her 1,000 times because, it's kind of, things weren't perfect. Not that she expects perfection, but, I have these things in my head, especially when a professional organizer comes over, right? I'm like, this is like I don't know. It's
You do
terrifying.
know. I know what you
I do
yes,
know, but it's
I hear you.
terrifying, right?
You
And
did it.
so,
I'm so proud of you.
so I'm like, come on over and clear this. And she did, and it needed
Yeah.
space clearing. And part of it
Yeah.
needed space clearing because I brought in some new things in the house that were like secondhand.
Okay.
And I have some things, but I've been running so fast. Like, I don't know that I cleared the energy appropriately. Like, and
Mm.
she's an expert at that. So to
Yeah.
have her come in, make sure the chi in my house is running smooth, and to have a couple of conversations about, and I have to tell a funny, right? I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast that there's currently a pigeon living at my house.
No, we
Have we
haven't.
talked about this?
No, we
Okay.
haven't. I found out today.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to start with the Melody story and back
Okay.
up to how there's a pigeon living at my house. So Melody and I are in my office talking about how I want to change some things in my office and my environment in my working office, right? Because environmental wellness is like your personal space, your working space. Well, I work out of my house, so it's both. So she was coming in, and so I said something, because she said, are there any areas in the house I can't go into? And I said, yeah, in the very top upstairs. And she's like, what's up? What's going on? And I'm like, oh, there's a pigeon in there. And she said, well, you can call somebody and they'll come get wild animals out of your house. I'm like, oh, this pigeon had an invitation. Um, so Alex was at the park not too long ago with Monty walking the dog at this big event. And this pigeon walks up to her. And the pigeon has a homing pigeon band on it. And, she does animal rescue. She does bird rescue, which how the pigeon picked her out of hundreds of people in the park to walk up to. Like, it's literally, she emits the signal. If you are an animal that needs care, walk up to me. Because I think we had the conversation on the podcast about how the hamster walked up to her, right?
We did.
So the pigeon walks up to her and she rescues the pigeon, calls the owner who's in Alabama to say, hey, I found your pigeon. He's like, yeah, second time this homing pigeon has not made it home, has chosen not to come home. So I don't want him back. You can rehome him. I can tell from the conversation that you are right. Rehome the homing pigeon. There's a whole comic strip involved in this conversation. So fast forward, I don't know what month we're on, month 3, month 4, we still have a pigeon. So yes, that is how Pigeon came to be. And Pidgey is adorable. He's beautiful. He's cute. And anybody listening, if you are interested in a pigeon, reach out to Christine at womenconnectedandwisdom.com. And I'll make sure yeah. Pidgey's an adorable pigeon. Yeah. So all types of resources. I love the way you said that.
What? Which part?
All types of resources that women connected.
We do all types.
You looking for a pigeon? We're gonna hook you up.
Need a conference ticket? We got you, right? Hilarious. So what's the second part? So Melody came. You told me the part about Pidgey. Was there a second part to the story?
No, I mean she was just like, she was saying you can hire people to get rid of, like, she thought that the pigeon was in my attic. No, the kid's in the attic and has invited the pigeon.
Extra guests. But I love it because that's what Women Connected in Wisdom is about, right? Somebody says, I've been running so fast. I've been doing this work for years, because you've been taking Melody's class for years, right? And actively doing the work through stuff. But recently, since last year in the class, you needed some more help, and you didn't even have to be there. You were able to be effective with your time, call in an expert who you knew and trusted. And I think it's beautiful.
Right. And everybody in the house slept better that night because she cleared the energy, and it was beautiful. And I was really grateful for her skills and who she is, and that she's connected to us. And and of course she gave me my orders for what's next. We made a plan, and she does it very incrementally. She's like 1, 2, 3. This is the system we're setting up. So it was lovely. So
Mhm.
I'm looking
I
forward
like
to it.
that. It's not overwhelming, you know what I mean? Like, we talk about creating habits, and sometimes it might be 17 steps for a process. It might be 3, but it might be 17 sometimes, and that 17-step process is, like, overwhelming. So I love that she makes it so easy to implement the tools that she uses.
Well, one of the reasons I thought it was such a great time when we talk about environment, right? And environmental wellness is because she's like, well, I know you have this, this, and this on your calendar. So do we want to wait until this time? And I'm like, well, no, I'm prepping for taxes. And this time last year, I was like, oh, I don't have my system set up, but I did the taxes first and didn't get to the system. And this year I wanted to have a consultation with her of like, while I'm going through this paperwork, what is the system that needs to happen with it? Because I don't want to do this again. I want to get the system set up this year for next year to serve, right? And so yeah, it's interesting.
You got
So what
this.
about you when you think about environmental wellness? When you think about your space and the people that you're surrounded with?
Mhm. Oh, I think about, right now it's been smell goods, like making sure that everything's reset. Like, for example, right now dishes are here longer than is ideal.
Mhm,
Sometimes the rule isn't always, followed. It's not always perfect, but we know
mhm,
that's the goal. I know why they're there. We're doing what we love and being on the podcast. And so that took priority and I'm okay, right? And then beside
mhm,
me, I have this Zanaya Natural sage candle burning. And this has been beautiful because, I've been transitioning through the different income strategies, right? And taking this position. And so that causes logistics to change, which I talk about in volume 2 and setting up the habits. So one of my financial habits, and this has been helping me hold my environments, right? One of my financial habits that I learned from one of the experts I share in the book is if you don't need to buy it today, then don't spend the money on it today. Right. It helped me not get a car charger for like over
mhm,
a year. And so I was at the retail space this last weekend, and that's one of my things that I've been doing, right? Keeping things like this on my schedule, in my environment, for my
mhm,
diet of what I listen to and what I participate in. Glow Club is one of those things. So I'm at Glow Club. Zanaya Naturals has their products in the retail space finally back. We've been ebbing and flowing with that. And I said, I need a candle, but she didn't have the sage that I wanted. And as you see, this is like, it also doubles as massage oil, right? And
mm,
so I wanted to use the rest of this sage candle. And she had told me months ago about a candle burner. I had waited to get it. And we're out grocery shopping yesterday doing our second round at Kroger. We go to the farmer's market, then go to Kroger. And I said, oh, they have candle warmers. It's like $7, right? You're like,
mhm,
$7 for a candle warmer. But I said, but a whole candle is like $25 and it's worth it, but this is $13.80 a candle right here. And if I buy another one, we're adding on to it. So this $7 actually helps us use not one, but 2 candles that we have at the bottom of this container of our containers around. So for my environment, the smell good, the being intentional of the steps of where we are in the systems and why we're taking the steps for the strategy that we're using right now, has been instrumental. Like I shared at the beginning, having certain people that I talk to about certain things,
mhm,
been in this, and I'll share it because we're on the podcast in this new position. Somebody that I know has been one of the connections to bring me on, right? But
mhm.
now our relationship is different than it was when we worked together before. And
Right.
so, right, he can't be one of my people that support my ebbs and flows in my position. It needs to be somebody
Right.
else because of that dynamic of it. So for
Right.
me, environmentally, it's really been ebbing and flowing through the different dynamics and the details of the smell good or the social support or the financial strategy or the spiritual time. And if you sleep a little bit instead of getting up early to do the devotion, but still are mindful throughout the day, like it's going to be okay. If the dishes sit there this time, if this happens this time, if everything is still taken care of. And
Mm,
that's been my question. In the environments that you're in, is everything that you need taken care of? And that's what I've been focusing
mm.
on.
Right? And checking in with yourself and your body of what is it that you need now?
Yes.
Right? Because I think that changes. It changes in different seasons of our life,
Yeah.
right? And it changes in what's going on in the outside world and what's going on with the people we live with. And, and some of those don't ever change, right?
Right.
But some of
And
it does.
and a lot of it does consistently, right? So since we brought it up, and somebody who adamantly follows Women Connected in Wisdom may be looking for resources, can we dip a toe into this narcissistic conversation? What do you think about when you think about that? Because through COVID and things being shut down, I was fine, right? I'm thinking about grocery money. I knew other people would be thinking about far heavier situations, right? So when I think about narcissism, I think about somebody who portrays something on the outside, but that's not how it is at home, right? Can have
Mhm.
almost not perfect characteristics, but the characteristics that you would want, right? Somebody that would make you trust them, but that's not really how the situations actually go. What do you think about
Well, narcissistic is defined as having an excessive or erotic interest in one's self and one's physical appearance. So a lot of times just on its surface, to me that's even a surface definition, right? But it can actually be a personality disorder that can lead to abuse and things like that. So people with this disorder, you look at things like they have a unreasonably high sense of self-importance and require constant excessive admiration. They might feel like they deserve privileges and special treatment. They might expect to be recognized as superior even without achievements. They may make achievements and talents seem bigger than they are. Boy, as I'm listing this, doesn't this sound like somebody we know, like that's currently running for one of the highest offices in
Mm,
the United States?
mm. I wasn't even thinking that far, but I could see where you're going.
I mean, I haven't had a session with him personally, but as I'm reading that off, I'm like, whoa,
Mm.
right?
Have it
Um,
worth the conversation.
right. So yeah, it is.
Mm.
Yeah, it's
So for
it's a big
me,
deal. Yeah.
yeah, and I appreciate you reading the definition, because that's what we do here to make sure we know the operational definition we're coming
Mhm.
from. We know that we're on the same page about the details that we're talking about because it can be nuanced and layered. And what we talk about a lot, we just had multiple conversations, right? About
Mhm.
women being able to use their voice and what's the reason that,
Mhm.
we get into these good girl, boxes that we're supposed to act a certain
Mhm.
way and life is supposed to look a certain way. Well, as business owners, don't you have to talk about what you did well and, take time to celebrate your wins and share it? So if it's not
Yeah.
balanced, somebody might say, oh, you're not operating in a healthy way. Well, no, it depends on the context, right? Because if you don't market, you're going to go out of business. So we got to figure out when it's healthy and when it's
Yeah,
not.
and
And
I
that's
think
why we're
that's
having the
very
conversation.
different.
It
Yeah,
is.
it's very different
And
than
they don't always care about that though. When they're talking to women, they're going to
right.
use whatever they want to do to flip it and be like,
Absolutely.
"See, this is what you're doing."
Well, and I want to pull up the statistics about it because I'm not
Mm.
an expert on this, right? I've
Right,
had a
me neither.
little training on it, and but I'll pull up the statistics in just a minute. But I wanted to bring this to your and our listeners' attention because WebMD, which you don't believe everything you read on the web, but it's a pretty solid source. It talks about narcissism symptoms and signs,
Okay.
and I'm gonna link this in our show notes. But it says the cause of narcissism isn't known, but it can be linked to you want to know what the first bullet point is?
What's the first one?
Environment.
Hello.
Environmental wellness, right? Your
Yes.
parents may have given you either too much adoration or
Mm.
too much criticism that didn't match your actual experiences and achievements.
Can you read it again?
Yeah, it says the cause of narcissism isn't known, but it can be linked to your environment. Your parents may have given you either too much adoration or too much criticism that didn't match your actual experiences and achievements.
So, the matching, let's go to the achievement.
Mm-hmm.
matching achievements, because experiences can be skewed based on perspective,
Mm-hmm.
right? Little kids always going
Mm-hmm.
to want to win, but you don't always win,
Mm-hmm.
right? So matching actual experiences. This is why for me it's so important to talk to your team, right? To have a SWOT analysis, to be honest about what happened, what worked well, what didn't, because we have to base, I believe in order to be healthy, it's healthy to base our perspective on what's actually going on, right? So this person can then take their actual weaknesses and see how a team can complement them to help them go to the next step, or a partner, right, can complement them and help them go to the next step, and also how they can best show up in their strengths. Um, I didn't realize that I was feeding into this until I stepped down as a manager, and I realized that I gave a lot of positive feedback because I believe in people's potential, and I feel like they don't get that enough. But I wasn't it wasn't adding to me being as great of a leader as I thought it was if it wasn't balanced, right? If I also wasn't giving my team members and my staff ways to get better, if I saw it, then I was also undercutting their development and enabling mediocrity and the standard not being upheld, possibly somebody getting hurt or worse because I was only giving partial feedback and not complete balanced feedback. So it's interesting that it says that. And then, we talk a lot about the origin of stuff and the root of stuff here on the podcast. I love that it says environment, because that points to the opportunity that it's not only biological, which is 1/3 of it, right? But the other 2/3, which is the nurture part, the environment that a person is in and can eventually choose to either keep themselves in or take themselves out of, can change that. So that shows hope for me in situations like this.
Yeah, I think that, when you're talking about personality disorders,
Yeah.
often they happen at very young ages due
Mhm.
to trauma or due to our needs not being met, right? They said it can also be linked to genetics,
Mhm.
inherited characteristics, certain personality traits, or
Mhm.
neurobiology, which is interesting because this is a connection between your brain, behavior, and thinking. So,
Mhm.
this, and I don't know, this is completely off the cuff, have not done research here, but it fascinates me to think about this because I'm thinking about the work that Andrew Huberman is doing over at the Huberman Lab at Stanford. And he's talking about like the power of play on our neuroplasticity in our brain. So I'm just curious about this. Like when you're talking about it being the connection between your brain, behavior, and thinking, that means that oftentimes there's room for change
Mhm.
if you want to change,
There's
right?
absolutely neuroplasticity,
So,
so just like you were saying, and I think we were live on one of the shows. You said, "Oh my goodness, look at these sources. 30 years ago, they were acting
mhm.
like we didn't know what we were talking about. Now it's leading in science."
Mhm.
And so that is why, and again, we talked about it in volume 2, congratulating in public and coaching in private. Things like that
Mhm.
matter even to children, not because of a vanity reason, but the trust in the communication, the opportunity to be able to get better instead of what we see sometimes being the effect of standardized tests and the way education is pushed to get the test scores needed. This feeling and this knowing that I have to know it this way, and if it's not correct this way, then everything else is out the window.
Mhm.
And I don't have
Mhm.
space to grow and get better from this point that I got off. It's lost forever. And my worth is
Right.
deducted from that. So when we talk about environmental wellness and recognizing the signs that you might be in these situations, because with Women Connected in Wisdom, some women might be finding themselves in dangerous situations, right? When you think about that with your experience in social work, which resources would you push them to?
Oh, well, first of all, I wouldn't push
And
because
that's
it
what I was
doesn't
thinking.
work.
You were saying, and what refer them to?
Right, refer, because especially when somebody's in a domestic abuse situation or a situation where emotional and mental abuse is going on, and especially in situations like narcissism, right? This one can be tricky. It can be really tricky because you're like, everybody loves this person. A lot of times people love, like, because they're the life of the party, they're this or that, but they may not be that much fun to live with, or they might
Right.
actually be abusive behind the scenes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and they're, and we see some of these characters in movies and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have worked with women that it was that way behind the scenes, that like their partner just could not get enough attention. And that's where the abuse came from, right? And we all know, like, how do I want to say this, right? That's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. Like on an everyday, it's exhausting. Like, sometimes we've been around people like that you're like, whoo, you know. But imagine living with that energy 24/7, right? Hey, y'all, this is a great place to take a break, take a deep breath, and hear from our awesome sponsors that make Women Connected in Wisdom podcast possible. Shannon, we are so grateful that Shayla Glow is the sponsor of the Women Connected in Wisdom podcast. And I wanted to take this moment to ask you, when you think about the people who use Shayla Glow, who are we talking about?
That's a good question. I think about 3 groups really. One, the group that's removing hair, right? So whether you're using laser hair removal, waxing, shaving, you got to make sure that you're putting back what you're taking out. The second group, I think about those with dry skin and the problems that might cause, right? The scars, itching, burning, whatever the situation is, you definitely need all 3 steps, right? The exfoliation, making sure you're taking the dead skin cells off. The oil, putting in the moisture, and then the shea butter with the aloe, sealing it, helping you heal. Those things help both groups, right? And third, for the third group is those with chronic illness. The story is personally from cancer and different diseases that our population is dealing with on a daily basis throughout families as individuals. So I'm thinking about my mom and my grandmother and those around me with the same generational ties, right? And what positive, healthy habits we can start to make sure that we're maintaining our wellness, especially because the skin is like the cape, the exterior, the shield for your immune system. So with COVID, we have to be intentional about covering ourselves. And those are the groups I think about.
I love it. And you know what else I love about your product? It's all natural, handmade,
Yes.
and it smells great, y'all. So
Yes, esthetician
yay.
tested. Yes, esthetician tested and approved. Yes. Yes. What about you? When you think about your company, what groups of people do you think about?
Well, I work with individual coaching clients, I work in community classes, and with corporate teams. And with all of them, I use a strength-based, embodied approach to help folks connect with themselves and access joy, reduce burnout, and build resilience. Especially during these times, I think we need it. I think we need all the hashtag partnership power we can get.
Yes.
So always, like, I look up local shelters. I mean, my first thing is when somebody is referred to me, or I often get calls from people who are hearing somebody's situation, and it's like, what do I do? And the first thing is, if you're in immediate danger, you go if you can. And like it may be a 911 situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's a situation that you're thinking about leaving is the most dangerous time for somebody that's in a domestic abuse situation. So you want to have a plan, right? You want to reach out to your local shelter, figure out ways you can talk to them and get a plan. You might want to research it. Most shelters, which this is a really cool thing, most shelter websites have an escape button on their website. So if somebody comes in the room that might be the abuser, you can hit a button and it takes you to another site. So they don't look over your shoulder and see that you're on a domestic violence website. So isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sad that it has to be there, but it is a good thing to know. Like, the other thing is, you do want to be careful about browsers and things like that if you're in a dangerous situation. So public library, always a great place to go and get on the computer for free and search out resources. And,
Smart.
you can Google, how do I, right?
Because I would have been at home like browsers all over the place. That
Right,
makes sense. Yeah.
right. So your phone, you really don't want to be calling or checking it out on your phone, because a lot of times, if you're in an abusive relationship, you somebody's watching you, and especially if they feel the energy that you're getting ready to leave. That is the most, it doesn't mean you don't, it's just you have a plan and you have people and ways that you can do it. And there are resources. You're not alone, right? You can research this. And so it's a heavy topic. I've walked it with several women in my life. And the other thing I will say, because often it's a friend that's listening to this, right? Or hearing this. And I will tell you, as being a friend of somebody walking this path, you have to be ready for them to be ready. And, that's what I said to a friend that was going through it. And I offered resources and I said, I'm here when you're ready. And it was months later, but I meant that. So I was there when I got the call and was like, how can I support and what can I do? Because it's not always easy, y'all. Like, and we know we've had this conversation on the air before, but people and places and systems that are supposed to protect us often don't protect women, right?
Yes.
Restraining orders are a piece of paper. I was in a situation one time where I was helping a friend and I got called out in the middle of the night, and I was helping a friend, and I was with my friend, and she said, I think he has a gun. It says so-and-so, and the police were involved. And I said to them, I believe he has a gun, and I believe it's located here. And they had been called out to a domestic violence situation, right? And they looked at me and they said, ma'am, it's not illegal to own a gun in Georgia. And I thought, this is how women die. Like, this right here is how, right? Yeah. So we made a safety plan, and I asked the person they were trying to reconcile and trying to make things right. And I asked them to give their gun to somebody they trusted and to not have it back until anger management classes were taken. And, I was doing my social work, right? As a friend, not as but the system that was supposed to protect, that was called to protect, handed a piece of paper and said, call this number. Well, when you're in the middle of that situation, it's 3 a.m. in the morning, like,
that number is not on the way.
Right? It's tricky.
And restraining orders and things are still necessary. If you can, I would document and things like that, but I hear what you're saying. And I love what you said about a safety plan. I hear you saying partnership power, have somebody that you can trust to actually tell what's going on, and I appreciate what you said even about that person that's there, be ready when they're ready. And I'll add to it, and take care of yourself in the meantime, because we don't know how long it's going to take them to be ready. And that can be heart-wrenching and a lot to be that person holding space and removed from the situation and able to do something in the different ways that can show up, So that's why I wanted to go into it, just to speak to it, because we know that women are dealing with it, men are dealing with it, and it's a lot of times part of the conversation that is not safe to bring up, even when we are bringing up environmental wellness and we do finally get to those difficult conversations. It's easily one that's still left off the table because it's hard to believe, especially if this person looks nice and smells nice and is educated, we think they have everything together, and that's not always the case.
So this statistic, I just pulled up this statistic. You ready?
Yes.
Experts aren't sure how common narcissistic personality disorder is, but according to research, between 0.5 and 5% of people in the U.S. may have it. Between 50 to 75% of cases affect men and people assigned at male at birth. Right?
It said 0.5 to 0.05. Is it saying 50 to 5%?
It's 0.5 to 5% of people. Up to 5%. So it's not huge, right? But still, 5% of people in the U.S., that's a lot of people.
Yeah. Okay.
But what they're saying is, of that percentage, 50 to 75% of the cases affect men. And people assigned at male at birth.
Mm-hmm. And we talk about it, and we don't always on the show necessarily, but we talk about the difference of how men and women are treated, so the
Mm-hmm.
emotional availability, if a little boy is crying, allowing him to feel
Mm-hmm.
his feelings, but also not giving him a trophy if he didn't do well. Like, he doesn't get the cookie, doesn't get the trophy. Be honest with this man, okay? Be honest with the people in your life, and let's work through it. Instead of, like, I've been hearing this a lot the past few weeks. Instead of giving honest feedback, we're worried about what somebody's going to say. You're worried about offending somebody. And usually, most times, what I found is that if you phrase it with care, and even if you say, "Hey, I don't know how to say this," people are
Mm-hmm.
usually pretty receptive to stuff, unless, of course, we're talking about an unhealthy situation, which is something different. But
Right.
we
Right.
gotta be more comfortable giving feedback.
Well, I think that it's one of those skills that a lot of people haven't been taught. And I think it's also depends, like you talked about before, we've talked about on the show about culture, right? Like what were you raised? Like, were you like, I think that is, and it's like the water we swim in, right?
And that is why
It
it was
is,
so necessary to go into, and for us to do
right?
what we're talking about, because we talk about water, fruits, vegetables, nature, stuff people usually don't go into all the time.
I
What were
have
you
some
gonna
more
say?
stats for you, and I'm
Okay.
going to put them in the show notes, but this is fascinating.
Okay.
Who has narcissism? 1 in 200 people have narcissism. So that's at 5%. One in about 200 people. The
Mhm.
prevalence of narcissistic personality disorder is higher in certain demographics. Are you ready for this?
Mhm.
6% of forensic analysts,
Okay.
20% of people in the military,
Okay.
17% of first year medical students.
Hmm.
So, you think about that thing about doctors think they're God.
Mm.
Those are the doctors that have
That could possibly.
that
And
could possibly have narcissism or narcissistic personality,
I
because
hear you,
they like
because
that
you
phrase. When you think about phrases of where they come from and and then how when they're out of balance, right? And then a lot of people, I just want to put this on the table because, a lot of times people don't like diagnoses. They don't like labels. They don't like, right?
Mm.
Because we all have these characteristics.
Right.
I mean, really and truly, we all have some of these
Somewhere on the
characteristics,
spectrum, right.
right? But it's when it's out of balance
Right.
or when maybe it's coming over into abuse, right?
Right,
When
yes.
it's, I think that is just fascinating to me.
And 20% can sound low, right? But when we talk about, Catherine Bell's episode and Enneagram
Hmm.
and knowing who you are, using that key for leadership, and she shared that 10% of leaders, company leaders, are self-aware. That means more doctors and leaders have narcissistic tendencies and could be qualified as narcissistic than are self-aware.
Right.
That's what that means, okay? Like double. So
That statistic still, like, I'm like, what?
it's
And
double. That's crazy.
what?
So,
What?
so knowing how you are, what works best for you in an environment, operating from that place, partnership power. Um, what was I gonna say? Ooh, something about leadership. Oh, putting it on the table. Absolutely the water we swim in, which is why we have these conversations, right? And why it's so important to process stuff, because as a country and a culture, if we were one, we have not been doing that. So it makes sense in the culture of silence that we're not used to completely processing things. We're not used to doing that in a safe environment and people feeling heard, and then a resolution that we actually follow through to completion. You know, and that's what we do here at Women Connected to Wisdom, and that's what um, we look forward to helping other households do, and other businesses do, and other business owners do, as they become more self-aware and healthy as an individual, that have whole happy lives, right? But then to trickle out. I saw this thing online this week that said, it was talking about I think the trajectory of the child's life is based on, I can't remember what marker it was, I can find it, but it was based on the mother's happiness, and so that's
Okay.
why when we talk about women connected in wisdom and people are like, well, why women? Because when the women in the homes are okay and healthy and thriving, then the homes thrive. And when the homes are thriving, then the community and the governments and the schools and the medical system, everything else starts to thrive. Not in any way to leave the men out, but to
Mm-hmm.
completely take care of the whole woman, because then the whole world will be taken better care of.
Right.
Yeah.
When we talk about environmental wellness, like, right? So y'all, if you're listening to the podcast and have thoughts, reach out on social media.
Yeah.
Give us your thoughts. Give us if you've had experience in this, or if you're interested in hearing more. And this wasn't exactly the show we were planning on today, but I appreciate the conversation, my friends, and I appreciate thinking about it in this way. It is about that time for our wisdom in action.
Hmm. Environmental wellness this week. Let's see. What just came up for me is diving into the details.
Mm.
We're working on taxes. I'm working on wrapping up this grant session with Spark in the retail space here in the next few weeks in June. So looking at the last few steps, and even in the same energy of building volume 3, right? As we're starting and opening that project, also speaking at the high school next week, and excited to go speak to these ladies for Women's History Month. We're having 3 different rounds from 10 to 1. So, diving into the details of the different things that I share, the different things that I'm doing, that's what I'm doing for myself in order to keep order in my environment and the things I have on the table.
Mm. I love that.
Thank you.
I don't think that mine's going to be that complex.
Okay.
I
Comparison is the
think
thief of joy.
I think mine is probably going to be hashtag start the system.
Oh, I love.
So, because I'm working on this new system as I work through taxes. So, start the system. And that's probably just step one this week, but that's okay. I think that's where I'm at. And that's what I want to be playing with.
Start the system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, I've been here with you through it, and it can be a lot, but you've already been doing it. So you have more than you think you have.
Mm-hmm.
And, we do the work and we find it on the drive and everything. So, um, you'll get it. You'll get it. And you're back to basics. Like your chapter in volume 1 will get stronger. And as in all this other stuff, you're brilliant. And I believe in you. So you got this.
Oh, thank you, my friend.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. I
You're
appreciate that. You too. I grateful to be connected.
yeah.
Grateful. Is there anything we need to shout out before we are closing out episode
Yes.
152?
Yes, one big thing, and I mentioned it, but as you guys know, we are currently enrolling authors in the Volume 3 cohort. So we have a few more spaces to reach our goal of 24. If you would like to join us or know somebody's story who is definitely needing to be shared, resources that will help people be intentional about their dimensional wellness, let us know. Reach out to us at, where do we want them to go, Christine? CWP at womenconnectedinwisdom.com.
Sure. Or you know what? I will put the interest form in our show notes
Oh,
so they can find that.
yeah.
So you
So
bet.
if you're interested, yeah, fill out some questions. Let us know which dimension you would like to speak to, where you are in the process, and how we can support you. And we look forward to including your voice in volume 3. Yeah,
All
that's the big
right.
thing this week. That's what I would
I
say.
love it.
Love it. Okay, y'all. We will be back live at 5 next week for episode 153. Hope you have a great week. In the meantime, don't forget,
Be well.
be wise, and be whole. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Women Connected in Wisdom podcast. On air live on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern via Facebook and YouTube. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be part of the conversation and get connected at womenconnectedinwisdom.com.